They say weddings bring out the truth in people, but nobody expected this, not in the middle of the ceremony, not from someone like Naomi. The chapel was quiet, just the sound of shoes shifting on wooden floors and the soft echo of vows being spoken. Then, without warning, Naomi took a deep breath, stepped forward, and slapped the priest. Hard. There was no screaming, no chaos, just silence. A silence so heavy, it felt like the air had been pulled from the room. The groom didn't move. The priest lowered his eyes. Naomi stood there, staring at the man who was supposed to bless her marriage. It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't confusion. It was something else. Calculated. Controlled. A reaction that had clearly been building for a long time. What makes a bride confront a priest on her own wedding day? What happened before she walked down that aisle? Before we dive into this unbelievable true story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because the real story didn't start at the altar. It started years earlier, with a secret that should have never been buried. Naomi Turner, 29 years old, had spent her entire life in Savannah, Georgia. She was a schoolteacher, 2nd grade. Her days were spent helping kids learn how to read, holding their hands when they cried over broken pencils, and bringing lunch to students who forgot theirs at home. To those who knew her, she was kindness and patience wrapped in a soft-spoken Southern drawl. She was engaged to Christopher Bailey, a 32-year-old man who owned a landscaping business just outside the city. Christopher was well-liked, a little too charming sometimes, but dependable. Together, they looked like the kind of couple you'd see on a church flyer, smiling, clean-cut, perfect. The wedding was set in their hometown, under Spanish moss, in a church that Naomi practically grew up in. Her father was a deacon there for 18 years. Faith wasn't just part of Naomi's life, it was her foundation, which made her choice of priest all the more symbolic. Father Raymond, 54, had officiated dozens of weddings, baptisms, and funerals in their town. He wasn't just a pastor, he was family to many, and he had known Naomi since she was a teenager. So why, at the most sacred moment of her life, would Naomi slap him in front of everyone she loved? What line had been crossed that made her abandon all tradition, all grace, and erupt in rage? The truth, as you'll soon find out, wasn't about the wedding at all. It started 3 weeks earlier, when Naomi found something she wasn't supposed to see. 3 weeks before the wedding, Naomi walked into St. Agnes alone. It was late afternoon. The sun spilled through the stained glass windows, painting the pews in soft reds and blues. She went into confession, like she'd done dozens of times before, but this time she didn't come out the same. Witnesses said they saw her leave the booth with tears on her face. Her hands were shaking. She walked out without saying a word, avoiding eye contact with everyone, including Father Raymond. The next day, the church secretary said Naomi called to reschedule her premarital counseling, then canceled it altogether. No explanation. At first, people thought it was wedding stress. But then the photos came out. Their engagement shoot, once filled with laughter and warm embraces, now looked forced. Naomi wasn't smiling anymore. Her eyes looked distant, disconnected. Friends started asking questions. Was she okay? Was she having doubts? Her maid of honor, Lydia, finally spoke up. She told a friend, "Naomi started drinking. Every day. I found a bottle of whiskey in her glove box. That's not like her. Not at all." Still, Naomi kept moving forward. The dress was fitted, the flowers were ordered, the guest list was finalized, but something was clearly unraveling beneath the surface, and then this diary entry appeared. "Something happened. I can't marry him until I get the truth, but no one believes me, not even him." The pages were worn. Some words were crossed out, but the feeling behind them was clear. Naomi was trying to hold it all together while something was breaking her apart. She confronted Christopher a week before the ceremony, told him she was thinking about canceling the wedding. According to Christopher's brother, he completely freaked out. He begged her not to call it off, said she was just anxious, that it was just nerves. But it wasn't nerves. Naomi knew what she felt. She knew something was wrong. Then came the visit from the church. A quiet meeting, no minutes, no records, just Naomi, her father, and 2 church elders. They reminded her about commitment, about obedience, about honoring the sanctity of vows. But Naomi had already made up her mind. She wanted answers, because she had seen something she wasn't supposed to see. And that moment, that single moment of truth, would change everything. Would you have gone through with it? Would you have kept walking down that aisle, knowing what you knew? Let us know in the comments. It was just 6 days before the wedding when Naomi made her final, unexpected visit to the church. She didn't tell anyone she was going. No calls, no texts. It was close to midnight. The building was supposed to be locked, the lights off, the halls silent. But Naomi said she heard something. A sound she couldn't ignore. She walked through the side entrance, one she'd used her whole life, tucked behind the Sunday school wing. She crept past the dark sanctuary, past the altar, until she reached the hallway behind Father Raymond's office. That's where she stopped. Naomi said the door was cracked open just an inch, enough to hear everything. And what she heard was moaning. Not pain, not prayer, not grief. What she described later was unmistakable. She said she saw Father Raymond, with a teenage boy, one of the choir members, pants half off. The boy was crying. She ran. Naomi didn't tell the police. She told Lydia. She came to my place shaking. She said she saw something horrible, and that the priest told her, "If you speak on it, I will deny it. No one will believe you." Naomi went to Christopher, told him everything. She told me she saw something bad, but I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she was just scared about the wedding. But Naomi wasn't scared of vows. She was scared of silence. Because the next morning the priest called her, asked her to meet him privately. No apology, no acknowledgement, just pressure. Then came the visits from members of the church, one by one, all with the same message. Don't ruin your father's reputation. The church has handled things like this before. God sees your heart, but the world doesn't need to. It wasn't just dismissal. The church wasn't just ignoring her. They were covering something up. And Naomi knew, if she stayed quiet, it would happen again. What would you do in that moment? When faith and truth stand on opposite sides, which one do you choose? Let us know in the comments. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Naomi Turner had walked through those church doors 100 times before, for Sunday services, for her father's deacon ordination, for choir recitals and Easter mornings. But this time was different. This time, all eyes were on her. She stood at the back of the church in a white lace gown, veil draped over her trembling hands. The aisle stretched out before her, narrow, long, silent. Guests rose to their feet. The organ began to play softly, but Naomi didn't move at first. Lydia later said she had to gently touch her back to get her to take the first step. Step by step, Naomi made her way down the aisle, but her eyes weren't on Christopher. They weren't on her father, who stood proudly in the front pew. They were on Father Raymond. He stood at the altar, calm, collected, his hands clasped together. The same man who had baptized her. The same man who had blessed her house when her mother died. The same man she had once trusted without question. But Naomi knew something that no one else in that church did. She had seen behind the curtain, and now with every step closer to the altar, her body trembled, not with nerves, but with restraint. When she reached the front, Christopher turned to her with a wide smile, but Naomi didn't smile back. She looked tired, haunted. Father Raymond welcomed the congregation, his voice smooth, practiced. He read from Scripture, spoke of unity, of love, of God's eternal bond. And then he turned to Naomi and Christopher, preparing to begin the vows. That's when Naomi leaned in. No microphone picked up what she said. No guest could hear the words. Only Father Raymond. Witnesses described his expression shifting slightly. A pause, a tiny smirk. Not confusion, not surprise, just confidence. He whispered something back to her, and then, without hesitation, Naomi raised her right hand and slapped him across the face. The sound rang out like a gunshot. The congregation gasped. One woman in the third row dropped her purse. Christopher flinched, unsure what had just happened. Father Raymond didn't touch his face. He didn't back away. Instead, he calmly stepped toward the microphone and said the words that would ignite a storm across the country. "This wedding is a lie." He didn't elaborate. He didn't look at Naomi. He just turned and walked away from the altar. Christopher's knees buckled. He fainted, collapsing backward into his best man's arms. Naomi's bouquet slipped from her hands and landed on the floor, petals scattering across the aisle. Within seconds, the entire church dissolved into confusion. Guests shouting, phones pulled out, Lydia screaming Naomi's name, the organist unsure whether to keep playing. Naomi didn't cry. She didn't run. She stood completely still, her veil fluttering slightly in the air from the fans above. And just a few rows away, someone had caught it all on video. It hit social media before the chairs were even cleared. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. TikTok, Southern bride slaps priest during vows. YouTube, live footage, wedding turns into chaos as priest exposes lie. Instagram, clips of Naomi's trembling hands, Father Raymond's calm retreat, and Christopher being carried out. The internet exploded with theories. Was it an affair? A secret child? A fake marriage? But those who really knew Naomi already suspected something deeper. The Diocese of Savannah issued a statement 36 hours later, short, cold, avoidant. "We are aware of the incident involving Father Raymond and will be launching a full internal inquiry." No apology, no acknowledgement, no mention of the boy. But Naomi hadn't forgotten. 2 days after the wedding, news broke that rocked the town even harder. The teenage choir member, the same boy Naomi claimed to have seen in Father Raymond's office, was reported missing. His mother said he had left home that afternoon to ride his bike around the neighborhood. He never came back. His name was removed from the church bulletin the following Sunday, quietly, without explanation. The church gave no comment. Local police opened a missing persons report, but with no witnesses, no camera footage, and no leads, the case stalled almost immediately. To this day, the boy hasn't been found. Some say he ran away, others believe he was sent away. But Naomi? She believed exactly what she saw. She believed she was being silenced. Because when a woman stands against something that powerful, when she refuses to stay quiet, people move fast to discredit her, to protect names, institutions, legacies. But what they didn't count on was Naomi refusing to be buried under it. She gave up everything, her relationship, her church, her peace, to speak a truth no one wanted to hear. And in doing so, she forced a town, a diocese, and a community to reckon with what happens when silence becomes tradition. If this moment shocked you even half as much as it shocked everyone in that church, drop a comment below with, "I'm still watching," or let me know where you're watching from. I want to see who's really locked in with me right now. The slap was only the beginning. In the days that followed, Naomi Turner found herself at the center of a storm that no one was prepared for, not the church, not the town, not even Naomi herself. She was brought in for questioning by local authorities, not as a suspect but as a witness. And for the first 20 minutes she held it together, straight-backed, calm, focused. But when they asked her to describe the night she walked into the church and saw Father Raymond with that boy, she broke. Her voice cracked, her eyes filled, and for the first time since the wedding, she wept. She told them everything, what she heard, what she saw, the way the priest turned and saw her watching, and didn't even flinch. She told them how the boy looked at her, how he didn't say anything, but his eyes begged her not to leave. Then she pulled out her phone. There was a message, sent 2 days before the wedding, from an unknown number. No name, no emojis, just one short line. "Thank you for trying to save me. I'm sorry." Detectives traced the number. It belonged to the missing boy. But when they went to his house to question the parents, something strange happened. They refused to open the door. A note was taped to the mailbox. "We are grieving. Please respect our privacy." The mother wouldn't speak. The father sent word through an attorney. There would be no statements, no cooperation, no questions answered. People began to wonder, what were they protecting? And then Naomi began putting together the rest of the puzzle. It started with a visit to Christopher, not to beg him to take her back, not to explain herself, but to ask one final question. "When I told you what I saw, why didn't you believe me?" At first, Christopher said nothing. He looked tired, defeated, but then he confessed, quietly. "They told me you were imagining things," he said, "that you were having a breakdown, that it was stress." She asked who they were. He wouldn't answer, but she already knew. The same men who showed up at her door with scripture. The same voices that told her not to shame her father. The same church that told her to smile, to obey, to say "I do" even when she didn't mean it. Christopher wasn't just protecting his reputation, he was protecting the church. Naomi stood up, said nothing more, and walked out of his life for good. But just when she thought the worst was behind her, news came in that shocked even the police. What happened to Father Raymond next was something no one expected. The church didn't speak Naomi's name, not once. In the weeks following the incident, the diocese issued a statement, a short one, typed, polished. It made its way into the local paper under a headline about unfortunate events and internal matters. Father Raymond, they said, would be stepping aside, not disciplined, not charged, not investigated by police, just placed on leave, administrative leave. It was the kind of language that says everything without actually saying anything, the kind that protects power behind clean words and soft phrases. But in Naomi's world, nothing was soft anymore. The guests who stood at her wedding stopped calling. Parents from her school withdrew their children without explanation. Friends said they just needed space. And then, almost as quickly as the slap went viral, Naomi vanished. Her Instagram was gone, her Facebook erased, even her Venmo name disappeared. People said she moved away, others said she checked herself into a retreat somewhere up north. But no one knew for sure. She didn't want to be found. At the same time, the boy she tried to protect, the choir member, was quietly removed from all church bulletins. His name was no longer listed under the youth program. His seat in the choir remained empty. 2 weeks later, his family left town entirely. No farewell gathering, no forwarding address, just an empty house and silence. Reporters tried to reach them. Police made attempts to follow up. But the family gave nothing, not a word, not a single recorded statement. 6 months passed. The church carried on. A new priest was brought in. Services continued. The altar was polished. The wedding photos that had once hung in the lobby were taken down and replaced. And then, a video surfaced. Not from the church, not from the police, but from a private investigator who had been working the case quietly, off the record. The footage wasn't polished. It was grainy, slightly distorted, but the timestamp was real, and what it captured changed everything. It showed the back hallway of St. Agnes Church, dark still, just before midnight. The time matched exactly with the date Naomi had said she went to the church that night. In the footage, Father Raymond and the boy, walking together, slowly, quietly. The boy's body language was tense, shoulders hunched, steps unsure. Father Raymond's hand rested gently on his shoulder, guiding him forward. They reached the office door. The priest unlocked it. The boy stepped inside. The door closed behind them. That was the last frame. The internet caught fire. The video flooded every corner of social media. YouTubers analyzed it frame by frame. Podcasts debated its meaning. Threads exploded with arguments. Was this the proof? Was Naomi telling the truth all along? But the church? The church pushed back. Their legal team released a rebuttal within 24 hours. They claimed the footage had been tampered with, that it was deep-faked, that it did not match the official surveillance files from the church's own system. They never explained why their footage was missing, or why they hadn't provided it earlier. The debate became louder than the facts. People began choosing sides, not based on truth, but based on loyalty. To the church, to Naomi, to silence. Eventually, a civil lawsuit was filed. Not by Naomi, but by an advocacy group from Atlanta. They accused the diocese of obstruction, failure to report abuse, and enabling misconduct. But no criminal charges were ever filed, no arrests, no trial. Father Raymond quietly retired from public ministry, moved to another state. Rumors say he changed his name, lives alone, but legally, he walked away untouched. And Naomi? She never resurfaced. No public appearances, no tell-all interview, until one day a podcast received an anonymous audio recording. 31 seconds. No video, no music, just a woman's voice. Tired, controlled, and unmistakably Naomi. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't explain. She simply said this: "I don't regret slapping him. I regret trusting him. I regret believing that someone in that building would choose the truth over their comfort. I regret the silence that followed, the looks, the rumors, the betrayal, but I don't regret the truth. I never will." That was it. No follow-up, no context. Just one woman's final truth, spoken into a world that never wanted to hear it. And now, we ask you, if it were your daughter, your sister, your friend, would you tell her to stay quiet? Or would you tell her to stand up, knowing what it would cost her? Let us know in the comments, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. We tell the stories others try to bury, stories that matter, stories that ask, what would you do? Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It doesn't show up in handcuffs. It doesn't make the news ticker. It doesn't even feel like justice. Sometimes, it's just a woman walking away from everything she thought was true. Sometimes it's a slap, not out of rage, but out of desperation. Sometimes, it's telling the truth, knowing full well that no one will believe you. Naomi told her truth. She stood in front of hundreds of guests, in front of the man she was supposed to marry, in front of the priest she was supposed to trust, and she shattered the illusion, not for drama, not for attention, but because somewhere deep down, she couldn't let the silence keep winning. And yet, she paid the price. She was vilified, mocked, erased from the story while the real villain slipped behind the curtain of the church. No arrests, no closure, just whispers in the pews. And a missing boy whose story may never be told in full. So now, the question falls to you. If you were Naomi, what would you have done? Would you have said something? Would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Would you have slapped the priest, knowing it might be the only moment the truth got heard? Or would you have walked down that aisle and kept pretending? Was the slap enough? Or was it all she had left? If this story made you think, if it stirred something deep inside you, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, not for me, but so that this story reaches someone else who needs to hear it. Maybe someone who's afraid to speak, maybe someone who already did and wasn't believed. And if you're still here, it means you care about the truth, even the kind that hurts. So don't stop now. Subscribe, because we tell the stories that others won't. We uncover what institutions bury. We ask the questions polite society avoids. And if you're wondering what happened after this, if you're ready for the next case that will shake you even more, tap this video right here on screen. It reveals a shocking betrayal between a bride and a groom. The story a groom caught giving head to bride's sister. What's your take on this story? Comment below. I read every single one, and I want to hear your truth. Because at the end of the day, Truth only lives when we speak it.